Good evening and welcome to the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC on ESPN 22, also known as UFC Vegas 24, UFC Fight Night Whittaker versus Gastelum, whatever you want to call it. It is the card happening this Saturday at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. For Sherdog Radio, I'm your host, Ben Duffy. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network and the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, as well as a contributor for Sherdog.com. Keith, how are you doing this evening?
I'm excellent, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Just want to throw out a few general observations about this card before we jump in. So we're going to be talking about a 12-fight card. There are 13 fights scheduled, but as of a couple hours ago on Wednesday night when we're recording this, Ricardo Ramos fell out of his scheduled matchup with Bill Algeo. Algeo is not officially off the card, so the UFC might be looking for a last-minute replacement to fight him, but we certainly won't be talking about it because I doubt they're going to find it in the next hour to hour and a half. So in throwing this number out at you, I'm talking about the 12 fights that we know about, so 24 total fighters. Of the 24 fighters on the card, 8 have losing records in the UFC.
Oh, man.
Another 5 have 500 records in the UFC, and that's not even counting the 3 who are debuting and are 0-0.
Yeah.
On this entire fight card, there are only 8 fighters with winning records in the octagon. There are only 2 fights on the whole card between 2 fighters that are above 500 in the UFC. One, obviously, is the main event between Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. The other is between heavyweights Alexander Romanov and Juan Espino, both of whom are just 2-0 in the UFC.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I mean, when you're the UFC, you're putting on as many cards as you are, as many as you have to keep up your obligations to your broadcast partners. A lot of cards are just going to be whatever. You've got almost 600 fighters on roster who need X number of fights per year. So you expect every card to have at least a couple fighters who are on 2-3 fight winning streaks, are, on probably fighting for their jobs. But to me, it was kind of shocking to see so many of them concentrated in one place here. For those who don't, who are new to listening to us or haven't heard our post-fight recap shows, just know that we have a segment called The Cut List, and it might be extensive after this one.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, I'm looking at the roster trying to figure out who's the 8 guys with a winning record. I'm like, does Jeremy Stephens have a winning record? Jeremy Stephens has a losing record in the UFC.
Yes.
That's surprising to me. I knew it wasn't a great record, but I was surprised it was a losing record.
Yeah, well, I mean, we just talked last week, or if we didn't, I talked on other radio shows about kind of what a cool stat it is that Jim Miller is 37 years old and just had his 37th fight in the UFC. Jeremy Stephens is 34, and this is his 34th. The difference is Jeremy Stephens is below 500, where Jim Miller, even all the rough times he's been through, is above 500.
Yeah, because Jeremy Stephens came in the UFC, he had like a rough start, then he went on a run, and then he had a rough finish. So, yeah, right. I get that. Yeah, I'm looking at the card, and we're talking about, like, name value. I'm saying, like, who's the 3 biggest names, not counting the main event? And it's probably Arlovski. It's still at this point. Jeremy Stephens. And believe it or not, it might be the former title challenger, Jessica Penne. That might be our top 3.
And, I mean, really, Andrei Arlovski, he's just kind of what you slot in when you can't get Parker Porter.
That's right. Yeah, somehow Chase Sherman loses Parker Porter and gets replaced with former world champion, someday UFC Hall of Famer Andrei Arlovski.
That more than anything is a sign that Arlovski probably needs to hang it up after all the things he's done, just all the legendary things he's done, and what a part of the history of that division he's been. Through the good and the bad. I mean, he's had some like terrible, humiliating losses. He's had some incredible wins. To know that he is just now interchangeable with Parker Porter.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what's funny? I'm looking at this card, and imagine if something happens to the main event from now until Saturday, and the main event got canceled. Imagine recapping with the main event and of Jeremy Stephens on a 4 or 5 fight losing streak versus Jakar Close, who he's got a decent record in the UFC, but yeah, he's not in our top 15. Imagine if we had Jeremy Stevens moving up a weight class on a big losing streak in Jakar Close as our main event. I mean, what else? I mean, they actually might have to throw Arlovsky in the main event.
I think they probably would, just as the recognizable name value. I think you're probably right.
You know what? Just screw it. Throw Romanov versus Espino. 13-0 versus 10-1. Ultimate Fighter winner.
Oh,
both undefeated in the UFC. That's
the thing right there. They'd have to go back to giving the cards nicknames. UFC undefeated.
Yeah,
and it's Romanov versus Espino.
No, Espino has a loss in his career.
But in the UFC, like they're both 2-0 in the UFC is like the best they can do. Wow, yeah. So, a little bit of laughter at the expense of this card, but while we laugh, this is deadly serious business for all 24 people we're going to talk about. So we're going to give them as much time, effort, and analysis as we possibly can. Anything else you want to say before we jump into the undercard here?
No, I mean, the people have been waiting long enough. Let's get into it.
All right. The UFC Vegas 24 prelims start with a bantamweight matchup featuring Tony Gravely and Anthony Birchak. Gravely, the 29-year-old, is 20-6 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of Dana White's Contender Series Season 3 back in 2019. He lost his UFC debut last January to Brett Johns, came back last November with a split decision win over Gerald de Freitas. He will face Birchak. The 34-year-old is 16-7 overall. He is 2-3 in the UFC across 2 different stints with the promotion. He went 2-2 with the UFC back in 2014, 2015, was let go for a while. He went through Ryzen, Combate Americas, LFA. He returned to the UFC last November and lost to Gustavo Lopez via rear naked choke. Perhaps in recognition of their recent results, Gravely is a strong favorite right now. He is minus 300, minus 310 or so, where you can get Birchak at plus 250 or plus 255 on the comeback. Keith, who do you like in this one, and how do you see it playing out?
Well, you talk about Gravely. Gravely's guy, he's a true veteran. He has 26 fights. He's kind of battled all over the regional scene for a while, but I'm very familiar with him because at one point he had a nice stint here in Rhode Island with CES. As you said, he has 26, 27 professional fights. He has 6 losses. The thing that stands out to me about his losses is that all of his losses have come against quality opposition. Like he hasn't, you have that guy that had that many wins, and then all of a sudden you look and there's like, who the hell's that guy? Who's Bobby? Who's Bobby Brown? So I would say he's a fairly one-dimensional fighter. He still needs to improve on his feet. He lacks head movement. He's been rocked many times, but on the feet, he's a brawler. He throws big shots. He springs into the pocket, unloads with flurries, and he likes being in the pocket because he feels comfortable in that closer range, and that's because of his wrestling background. This is a strong wrestler. He's a D1 NCAA wrestler. I've said this before when we broke down Gravely. He has that second level wrestling where when he drives through the hips, he's able to get to the second level. What I mean by that is, when I try to explain this to kids I've coached in wrestling, when a sprinter, you talk about the sprinter with the second level, you really talk about when they talk about the NFL wide receiver combine running, it's when you get out the box and then you hit that second speed, like almost like increase that speed. That's what he's really good at. He's good at driving through hips. Though if he misses the shot, he's comfortable underneath, and that's actually bad. He'll get sprawled out on and eat some hammer fist because of it. But if he's on top, he's heavy top pressure. He's been accused of having lay and pray moments, which he has, especially when he was a champion in CS. There was some boring matches. But, if he's on top, he can land some hammer fists, some punches. And if a scramble ensues, he's got a pretty good ability to take you back. Now move over to Birchak. This is his, he's now in his second stint in the UFC, as you mentioned. I don't think he was a UFC fighter before. I think he's a worse fighter now. He doesn't do anything spectacular. He also is a bit of a brawler. He's wild, loads up on everything. I would say his calf kicks are pretty solid. He's added that since he's been fighting. Like I watched one of his fights in Combate. He really targeted the calf kicks, which every fighter at this point should be doing. But the rest of his striking is pretty mediocre. He keeps his chin high, and he can't even count on that chin because he's been blasted before. And his defensive wrestling's weak. He's been taken down. His last fight in his return to the UFC against Gustavo Lopez, Lopez took him down easily. But he can get some takedowns himself. But I would say it's against non-wrestlers. Like I would be shocked if he, was able to out-wrestle Tony Gravely. To me, I think this card has a lot of very evenly matched fights where we'll probably disagree on them. I would be surprised if we disagree on this one. To me, this is a pretty easy call. Birchak has struggled to be, with takedown defense before. Gravely is going to take him down. He's going to grind him out for 15 minutes. Give me Gravely by decision.
I noticed the same thing that you did about Gravely's record, where there are no bad losses there. They're all to people who have either made it to the UFC and have done pretty well, or guys like Patchy Mix and Ricky Bandejas, who were over in Bellator in one of Bellator's best divisions and actually doing really well. He also has some good wins on his record. You mentioned that he had a run, through CES where he was pretty successful, but he came into the UFC on a 6 or 7 fight win streak, and he'd beaten some people in there like Draco Rodriguez, who, was in the UFC. Ray Rodriguez, the guy he beat on Dana White's Contender Series. I mean, he made it to the UFC. He's 0-2 in the UFC, but like even the guy he beat on Dana White's Contender Series very badly made it to the UFC. He has a good strength of schedule for a guy who's under 30, has over 25 fights. I'm pretty I'm fairly high on him as a prospect, but I'm very gratified that you broke down his basic offense the way you did, because my note about him as I was watching his fights was he wants to be a wrestle boxer, but currently he's a get boxed and wrestle guy. Like he clearly wants to come in, throw like some great punches, and then hit a takedown when he's gotten the guy rocked. But usually it's either just a mess or he gets rocked and then hits the takedown.
Ben, just to correct before someone kills us, you said he's 0-2 in the UFC. He's actually 1-1 in the UFC.
No. Sorry. Ray Rodriguez is 0-2 in the UFC.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I think you're talking about.
No, Gravely's 1-1.
You are the guy. Why would I say that?
I'm high on Gravely as a prospect. I think he's done it the right way. He's got a lot of fights coming up, coming up to where he is. He has had a lot of fights. There's still time that he could develop into a much more polished striker than he is right now. I don't know where he stacks up in this division right now, but I do know that Anthony Birchak is a very suitable kind of. It's not a squash match, but it's a matchup that's winnable for Gravely in that it serves his strengths and it doesn't particularly exploit his weaknesses. Like Birchak likes to take people down. He is not taking Gravely down. Gravely does get lazy on the shot. You mentioned that he gets hammer fisted a lot. Also, he had his guillotine loss to Patchy Mix was just pure, I'm a wrestler, and I sometimes forget that in MMA, a dude can just grab my neck when I shoot if I leave my head outside. I'm not picking him to do any of those things against Anthony Birchak, and even if he does, I'm not sure Birchak is the guy to take advantage of it. I'm not going to pick the finish just because Birchak is tough. Just tough, durable guy. That sounds like a kind of backhanded compliment, but I really do mean it about Birchak. He's not an easy guy to finish. And thus far, most of Gravely's finishes have been kind of like death by 1,000 cuts, like beating up a dude for 4 rounds, with mild ground and pound. He's not going to have the time to do that to Birchak, and I don't know if it would even work. So give me Gravely by a lopsided decision as well. We stay in the bantamweight division, but do head across to the other locker room as Zarah Fairn welcomes Josiane Nunes to the UFC. Fairn, the 34-year-old fighting out of France, is 6-4 overall. She is 0-2 since joining the UFC in fall of 2019. She lost her debut at featherweight to Megan Anderson on the UFC 243 card. You may remember that card as the one where the UFC brought in two bright, shiny featherweight prospects in Fairn and what was the other girl's name?
Norma Dumont.
Norma Dumont, yes, both of whom lost badly and then promptly tried to drop to bantamweight. Welcome to featherweight life in the UFC. Anyway, she bounced back from that with another, to be fair to her, brutal matchup against Felicia Spencer, where she succumbed to ground and pound in the first round. So not a great look so far for Zarah Fairn, but she is dropping to bantamweight and she is meeting Josie Nunes, the 27-year-old Northern Brazilian, is 7-1 overall. She fought most recently in Katana Fight, which is not as exciting as it sounds. It is just a regional promotion in Brazil. I watched it and was very disappointed to find no katanas in evidence. The odds do slightly favor Nunes. She is out there at -125 or so, despite this being her debut. And Fairn is available at even money or even +105. Nunes, I mean, she is she's a striker by trade. She's, Muay Thai schooled, Muay Thai influenced striker. She is, how do I put this? She is, I'll call her stocky. Like, I'm not saying she's fat. She's got that Jessica Andrade at 135 build, where she is broad, like she clearly has muscle. She has a good bit of explosion. She's not a refined striker. She's kind of like, and I'm not saying she's Chris Cyborg. I'm not saying she's Vanderlei Silva, but she's got that early shoot box where you can tell I do Muay Thai in training, but mostly I just come out and brawl and try to take your head off in fights. And, the most technical thing I do is I grab a really nice clinch and throw some knees at you. Zarah Fairn's best route to victory here is going to be to try to get her hands on Nunes and get her to the ground before Nunes starts doing Thai clinch things to her. And I don't have much faith in Fairn. I'm even just hoping she successfully makes 135, unlike Dumont, who has now failed miserably twice. But with two fighters that are... Josie Nunes is a somewhat unknown quantity. Zarah Fairn is a known quantity and just not a very good one. I actually am going to go with the more experienced, or not more experienced, but more experienced at the UFC level fighter in Zarah Fairn. Give me Zarah Fairn by ugly decision, where she probably just gets takedowns and manages to log enough time there before they get stood up that she's not in the danger zone too long on the feet.
Wow, that's an upset. Zarah Fairn is actually a slight underdog. This fight is ugly. I don't think either girl is UFC level. Now, when I was breaking down the skill sets, I actually view this a little differently. I think Nunes might actually have the advantage on the feet, and Fairn might have the advantage, at least in the distance kickboxing. That's because Zan she's very tall, and she's dropping down to 135, so she should be even taller. She's long. She's aggressive on the feet. She works behind a jab. She actually, if you go back and look at her fight against Felicia Spencer, she was piecing Felicia Spencer up on the feet. I mean, it was briefly, and when Felicia Spencer took it down, it was all over. She avoids strikes. She holds her ground, but she leans straight back. I would rather have her kind of lean forward and like bobbing side to side. I think she'd do well there. She also loses power because she throws a lot of arm punches, so she doesn't have too much sting. But if she can land at full when she extends her arm, she got pretty good power there. Her ground game is terrible though. I haven't seen the offensive wrestling that you're talking about. Maybe she could get some offensive, but I've seen her takedown defense, and it is god awful. There's no get up game. There's no submission defense. I think about Spencer, also Megan Anderson, both smoked her on the ground. And Megan Anderson is not known for her ground game. And she had no submission defense. Megan Anderson set up a triangle choke on her. Now move over to Nunes. I'm not gonna pretend like I've seen too much film on her. It's tough watching these shaky camera films of Brazilian fighters. It's tough. What I've seen, southpaw, very aggressive on the feet, throws wild, kind of favors power over technique. Kind of has a Vanderlei Silva style to it, where it's wild, and there's a reason why that Vanderlei Silva style doesn't work anymore. There's a reason why Vanderlei was successful in early 2000s, not now. She has power though. She has 6 knockout losses. I also saw the clinch game that you're talking about. I think on the feet that'll be her best weapon if she can get in that clinch game. But what I saw on the ground of her, it wasn't that good either. Bad takedown defense, struggled to get back up. I did see her one fight get in a really bad position. The girl had her back, and she fought through the submission attempts, so I liked that. Like, she showed some composure. And when she got on top, she had it blitzing, kind of Vanderlei Silva go crazy on top, ground and pound. As far as prediction goes, I'm not very high on either. I think Fairn is a better striker. I think, it doesn't look good for Nunes from a distance fight, but if she can close a distance, I think she could win that. I'm not confident in Nunes' ground game, but it looks like she's probably taken one full BJJ class, which I don't know if Fairn has. Fairn is bigger though, and she's faced a better competition. I mean, we're a lot of what we're judging on Fairn is going against. And say what you want about the UFC featherweight division, like Spencer and Megan Anderson are 2 of the top girls in that division worldwide. So she's faced really good competition in her run. Yeah, I thought I was going to be the only one to take Fairn. I think she's surprised and finds a way to stay on the feet. And I'm going to just take her physical tools of being longer and rangier. I think she catches Nunes. I think she's going to put her out. So I'm going to give me Fairn and give me Fairn by first round KO. That's my first upset of the night.
Next up, it is lightweights as Austin Hubbard welcomes Dakota Bush to the octagon. Hubbard, the 29-year-old fighting out of Elevation Fight Team, is 12-5 overall. He is 2-3 in the UFC since joining out of Legacy Fighting Alliance back at the end of 2018. He fought most recently last August at UFC on ESPN 15, losing to Joe Selecki by rear naked choke in the first round. He will be taking on the man who wants us to call him Harry Bush, and I will do no such thing, but he is a 26-year-old fighting out of Missouri who is 8-2, also an LFA standout, and fought most recently icing Austin Clem in January at LFA 98 in under a minute with a head kick and then a couple of coffin nails on the ground. Bush is the slight underdog here. You can get him at plus 150 or so. Hubbard is minus 175 as the favorite. Keith, who do you like in this one?
Of the 3 fights that we've broke down so far, I would say this one I'm looking forward to most. Austin Hubbard's had moments in the UFC where he's looked good. He's also been extremely inconsistent, and Harry Bush is not a bad prospect, not a bad signing. I'll start with Hubbard. Hubbard's fairly well-rounded. I don't see major holes in his game, but that said, I don't see anything great. Like, I don't see anything really good about his game. And if I look at his last fight against Joe Selecki, Austin Hubbard looked terrible in that fight, which is really surprising to me. Now, he's big for the weight class. He's a very muscular guy. He actually put on muscle in his last fight. They talked about that in the broadcast. He's fairly athletic. He's got some good snap on his shots, and that's because he's heavy on his front leg. He really leans into it. But we've talked about this I feel like a million times. When you're heavy in your front leg, you're also wide open to leg kicks. Look at Conor McGregor. He likes to. He has kind of a little unorthodox style to his striking. He fights kind of long. He throws. He likes kicks down the middle. He likes stepping knees. He avoids strikes by backing straight up, which is, I feel like a broken record. I say it all the time. He's an underrated wrestler. Like, I would never call Austin Hubbard a wrestler, but I would say he's adequate there. he out wrestled Kyle Prepoli in his fight, which was I don't know if that's matters much, but to out wrestle him was impressive. Now move over to Dakota Bush. He's your classic wrestler boxer, pretty light on his feet. He really steps in the shots himself, which is surprising for someone who uses as much movement as again. He's good at staying on the outside and suddenly crash in the pocket. He targets calf kicks, which is a great weapon to have. He had an incredible high kick in his last fight. Good entries in his wrestling. Heavy top pressure. He likes to advance to better position. Good ground and pound. He's got 4 submission victories. It's a big step up in competition for Bush. That said, Hubbard looked so bad in his last fight that I don't have a lot of confidence in him. So I'm going to go with another upset, and I think Bush can get some takedowns. I think he has the advantage in the power on the feet, and I think he wins his UFC debut. So give me another upset pick. That's my second upset pick of the night.
Hey, very bold right out of the gate is Keith Schillen. I feel what you're putting down there. I'm not quite ready to take that plunge. I agree that Hubbard looked miserable against Selecki, but since then, I feel a little better about Selecki. In doing what he had to do against Jim Miller, even if the fight was completely dismal to watch, that gave me a little more faith in him. And certainly, you can understand why Hubbard came into that fight with what looked like probably 5 or 10 extra pounds of muscle on him, because his 2 previous losses had been to Davi Ramos and Mark Madsen, both of whom are, Madsen's an Olympic wrestler, Ramos is a decorated Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, but both of them are top position grapplers built like tanks. And I'm sure Hubbard was just like, well, I'm not going to let that happen again. And he hit the weights. It backfired against Selecki. Selecki was just much smoother and more nimble on the ground. And I think, and I worry that if that fight had not ended in 3 minutes or whatever, Hubbard might have had gas tank problems going forward, because he was already a pretty burly lightweight. That gives me pause against Bush, because Bush has shown that at least at the LFA level, he does have plenty of gas for 3 rounds. The more I think about your pick, the more I want to agree with it, because I can see Bush, kind of like Selecki, just being quicker and slicker once it hits the floor, and just taking Hubbard's back and choking him out. That's aside from the crazy head kick back in January. Dakota Bush's thing was, either taking his opponent down or pancaking a takedown attempt, spinning to the back, pounding on him a little bit, and then taking the rear naked choke. That was what that was basically his last 4 wins were all that way. But he also had a couple of flat performances in LFA. Like, before he got this fight booked, I was thinking he was a guy that might be ready for the Contender Series, sometime this year, and all of a sudden he's in the big show. I'm counting on that, that where Hubbard has already been fighting fighters at this level for a while to kind of show out. Give me Hubbard by decision, but it's by no means a confident pick, and you might be looking very, very right in just a few minutes. The prelims of UFC on ESPN 22 now take us up to the middleweight division, where Bartosz Fabinski takes on Gerald Meerschaert. Fabinski, 34 years old, from Poland, is 15-4 overall. He is 3-2 in the UFC, or he is 4-2 if you want to count his fight against Darren Stewart at Cage Warriors 113 that the UFC booked just as COVID-19 was sort of closing everything down, and was essentially a fight between 2 European UFC fighters on a different colored canvas. He will be taking on Meerschaert. The 33-year-old stalwart of Roufusport is 31-14 in his very prolific career. He is an even 6-6 in the UFC. Had a bit of a tough 2020. He won his first fight of the year against Deron Wynn back at UFC 248, then lost to Ian Heinisch and Hamzat Shemaev in a total of about 90 seconds in his last 2 fights of the year. So it is Meerschaert looking to bounce back. Meerschaert is just a slight underdog here. He is available at even money. I even see him around plus 105, where Fabinski is minus 125 as the slight favorite. Gerald Meerschaert is, I think, a super overachiever. Like, and I'm saying that about a guy who's 6-6 in the UFC, but for Meerschaert's, for his natural level of talent and athleticism, getting 10 plus fights in the UFC and winning half of them, I think, is a super example of overachievement. He is a minus athlete. Like, he's a big, strong guy, but like, if you put all the middleweights in the UFC in a decathlon and tested like their high jump, long jump, sprint, he's coming in close to dead last. Just
he'd probably beat Sam Alvey.
Sam Alvey, who falls very much into the same category, but is, several years older and has even more mileage on him. But yeah, absolutely, right up that Sam Alvey. If Ed Herman wants to drop back down to 185, he can join him. Those guys. Like,
I'd love to see like Duran win doing like what's the pole vault? I'd love to see that. Yeah. Hey, why am I more interested in talking about mid-level middleweights doing decathlon than breaking down this card?
Yeah. Having said that, like, Meerschaert, most of the time, at least until recently, even against a superior fast twitch athlete, he has been able to neutralize them. Just, he has a striking game that has been built around not overexposing his chin. He lived in the danger zone with Eric Anders for 3 rounds and never got touched. He lived in the danger zone with Kevin Holland for 3 rounds and, was never in like serious danger of being finished. He put away Trevin Giles. His best strength is definitely his ground game, odd for a Rufus Sport guy, but he's not great at takedowns. Like, his entries are slow, but he's good at ending up on top in scrambles. He's pretty good at takedowns from the clinch just by virtue of being a strong guy. And that's going to be his route to victory here against Fabinski. Fabinski, he just moved up from welterweight. I mean, I guess it is like 2 years ago at this point, but he came to the UFC as a welterweight. The tail of the tape is going to say the same for both guys. They're probably both going to be listed 6'1", 186 or whatever it is. But Meerschaert will be the bigger, stronger guy in the cage. Fabinski could certainly, catch him with something on the feet. That's what he did in Europe early in his career. He's not shown himself to be able to do that at the UFC level. So I don't think he's going to do Chimaev or even a Heinisch type things to Meerschaert. So even though Meerschaert's the slight underdog here, I have him pretty straightforwardly in this fight. I don't think Fabinski's going to have much for him. He's not going to be able to threaten him on the feet. Meerschaert will be able to get him to the ground, and from there, it's all it's all Meerschaert. If this does happen to go deep into the fight, Meerschaert, despite being the bigger guy, has a good gas tank. But give me Gerald Meerschaert by second round submission.
All right, so yeah, to me, this is one of the easier fights to break down. Now, you talk about Meerschaert. I agree everything you said about him, like being an overachiever. He's well-rounded, but he's not great at anything. I would call him like a middle-of-the-pack middleweight is like the ceiling for him. Like, he'll never be a top 20 guy. He's gritty. He's crafty. He has all those things you talk about when you talk about a veteran. But you talked about his offensive wrestling, but I think his defensive wrestling is terrible because he looks to go to jiu-jitsu. What we've talked about before, he has like that Dustin Poirier thing where he's looking for submissions to defend entries instead of sprawling, instead of stuffing the head, instead of hipping in, instead of looking for a switch, instead of whatever, whizzering. But he does that because he's crafty on the ground. He can get a submission off of his back. The one thing that worries about me is he's getting up there in age, and he got knocked out brutally in his last two fights. So that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. Now, of course, like Chimaev was his last fight. Like Chimaev would probably beat both these guys at the same time. Now, move over to Fabinski. He's a very one-dimensional fighter when I break down him. He strikes to simply close the distance. He wants to wrestle. He's got good entries. He can also, besides getting on your hips and taking it down, he can get the body locks and take it on that way. He's very willing to just grind. Like there's no audience this week, but he would be okay regardless if there's audience booing him. He knows that's his game. He'll grind. He'll smother you. You take his fight against Darren Stewart. He turned Darren Stewart into a takedown dummy. Good ground and pound. Has a very old school style of his ground and pound. Like he'll sit in the guard and Tito Ortiz short elbow you. I was surprised that when I go back to the Darren Stewart fight that he was taken down by Darren Stewart, someone who's, I would say, an underrated grappler himself, but not known for his wrestling. So Fabinski should be the better wrestler there. But when he was taken down, it was nice to see that he got up very easily. Like he could not be held down. Now, submission defense is his Achilles heel. He has 4 losses. 3 of them have come by way of submission. So to me, this really is 2 outcomes. Either Fabinski takes down Meerschaert and holds him down for 15 minutes, or Meerschaert gets taken down and then finds a submission, like you're saying. You said it from top side. You think he gets taken down against submission, but either way, so it's either that outcome or Fabinski just out wrestles him. I've always favored wrestling over BJJ. I think it gives you a bigger opportunity to win, while BJJ is more, hitting the duck at the carnival as it's moving instead of throwing the ball at the 3 pins in front of you. Give me Fabinski. I'll take him by decision. And I think Meerschaert's going to have his moments, but I don't think he's going to be able to catch Fabinski. So give me Fabinski by decision.
Next up, it is the strawweights, as veteran and former title challenger Jessica Penne welcomes short notice opponent Lupita Godinez to the UFC. Penne, the 38-year-old fighting out of Huntington Beach, is 12-5 overall. She is 1-3 in the UFC and returning to action for the first time in almost exactly 4 years. She exited the UFC on the back of consecutive losses to Danielle Taylor, Jessica Andrade, and Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the aforementioned title challenge. She had been scheduled to meet Hannah Goldie this weekend, but on 2 weeks' notice, it will be the undefeated Combate and LFA veteran Godinez stepping in. Godinez, a 27-year-old fighting out of Vancouver, British Columbia, is a perfect 5-0 in her brief career. She fought most recently on October 30th of last year at LFA 94, taking a decision over Vanessa Demopoulos. Odds in this one greatly favor the newcomer. She is out there at -300, Penne around +250. Keith, I would say, can Penne turn back the clock? But even if you turn back the clock, she was on a 3-fight losing streak. Like, tell me what you think of this fight.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel for Penne. She's had some incredible. I shouldn't say bad luck because some of it she put on herself, but you hear the stories. It seems like she's been a sacrificial lamb to USADA that other people haven't had to deal with. I didn't really follow the story too much, but you still feel bad for a girl not being able to make a living for a long time. As far as a skill set, I'm just going to base on what I last saw 4 years ago. I mean, that's the only thing I can do. Now, she moves forward. She does well to cut off the cage, though she's much better as the bull than the matador. She doesn't really like being pressured. That's because she avoids shots like it seems like everyone in this cage does by backing straight up. She's a long, lengthy girl. She has a long jab. Her right hand is pretty accurate. She also arm punches, doesn't really step into her shots, so she loses power. She throws a lot of kicks, but often they are naked, so she's open to counters. She doesn't check leg kicks at all. And for a girl who you'd think would be a striker, I think she's much better as a grappler. In close, is where she's much better. Plum clinch is solid. She gets in there and she'll grab the plum clinch and start blasting with knees. She'll get some body lock takedowns. She'll also catch a kick. If you throw a kick, take you down. I wouldn't say she's a wrestler where she shoots on her and gets entries, but I say she's like Felicia Herrig level of wrestling, where she can surprise a takedown by an entry and get you down. And she has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, so she is a submission threat. Move over to Godinez. She's a classic wrestler boxer. The film I've seen of her, she looks really good. Good boxing, good output, marches down her foes, fast hands, a great right hand. She really steps into her shots, generates real power in her shots. She's got good takedowns, though she prefers to box. She can wrestle. I've seen her one fight. She got in the hips and just picked her opponent up in the air and slammed her. She's hard to take down. You saw that in the last fight against Vanessa Demopoulos, where Demopoulos was desperately trying to get the fight to the ground and didn't get it down in 25 minutes. Often, I think one or two times she got it down, and it was usually from like weird things, like an Imanari roll to get it down, or stuff like that. Besides Jessica Penne being out for 4 years, she hasn't won a fight in 6 years. It's been a long time since we've seen Jessica Penne win. She's also 38. Now, on the flip side, Godinez, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, and I apologize. She's coming off the best performance of her career. She batted Demopoulos in her last fight. I think we're going to see very similar thing in this fight. I think this is going to be a slaughter. Give me Godinez. How do I say her name? I apologize.
Yeah, Godinez, you've got it.
Godinez. I got to work on my Spanish. I apologize. Give me the UFC newcomer to absolutely wreck Jessica Penne.
We've had some dissension on this card so far. There's no dissension here. And I'm making this pick really off of one fight by Godinez, because the level of competition she was meeting before then, just it was nothing to write home about. But she looked great against Demopoulos, and I think of Demopoulos as a very solid prospect in her own right. I mean, obviously, Godinez, she's another one, kind of like Dakota Bush, who I think is probably arriving to the UFC a little bit early. Based on the Demopoulos fight, my thought for her was, great, she's someone who could use 2 or 3 more fights, and maybe we'll see her on the Contender Series a year from now. Instead, again, we're seeing her in the big show now because the UFC needs bodies. Luckily for her, it's against Jessica Penne. And I agree. I really didn't give enough background or backstory on Penne's absence, because that would be a 20-minute or 30-minute show all by itself. But basically, Penne was given the USADA death penalty. You may remember the stories from back, 2017, 2018, but was clearly made an example of for things that were going on a widespread basis. And she was the expendable one. Anyway, the main problem for me with Penne is even when she exited the UFC 4 years ago, she wasn't looking great. Losses to Jędrzejczyk, who was at the absolute height of her powers at that time, and to Andrade, who had just dropped down to strawweight, are understandable and excusable. But Danielle Taylor might be the smallest woman that's ever fought in the UFC. And she handled Penne doing a lot of the same things that Godinez will do, like using athleticism and speed to bounce in and get into punching range on a taller striker. And Godinez, I think, is actually a more skilled fighter already than Taylor, and a little bit bigger. I'm tempted to just say Godinez by whatever she wants, but I expect Godinez just to get inside Penne's jab and 1-2, and either start mashing her from punching range, or take her down and just beat on her on the ground. Give me Godinez by round 2 TKO, probably on the ground. We now move up to the heavyweight division for the first of 2 heavyweight bouts on the card. And as mentioned off the top, the only fight other than the main event between 2 fighters who are above 500 in the UFC right now. It is Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino. Romanov, the massive Moldovan, is 30 years old. He is a perfect 13-0 in his career. He is a perfect 2-0 since joining the UFC late last year. He defeated Roque Martinez in his debut via arm triangle choke, and then choked out Marcos Rogerio Pesao de Lima at UFC Santos versus Teixeira with something that the Sherdog staff argued for quite a while over what even to call it, because he just sort of put his forearm on the guy's neck like it was a UFC 8 or something, and put him out. I don't know what else to say about it. He is taking on Espino, the 40-year-old man from the Canary Islands. Yes, he is made in Canarias. 40 years old. He is 10-1 in his career. He is 2-0 since winning the 28th and thus far final season of The Ultimate Fighter. And until or unless the UFC makes good on its threat to run another season of The Ultimate Fighter this summer, Juan Espino is half of the wonderful trivia bit that he, the winner of the final season of The Ultimate Fighter, is actually older than Diego Sanchez, the winner of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. Despite the fantastic trivia around his name, Espino is the slight underdog here. He is plus 120, even plus 125. Romanov, you can get at minus 140 to minus 150. Keith, I'm just going to say 2 surprisingly good heavyweights. That's all I can say about this.
Yeah.
Like, Romanov, even though he has 13 fights, he just feels like an incredibly raw product to me. He is a guy that looks like Matt Mitrione did after about 5 fights, where he's good at a lot of things just because he is actually an outstanding athlete. He's a dude that needed to start cutting weight to get under 265 once he started fighting in real live promotions and was getting looks from major promotions. He is just a gigantically thick dude. He's only like 6'2", but he is a full pushing the limit heavyweight. And despite that, he's an athlete. He's pretty quick on his feet. His hands are pretty fast, even if his combinations are basic and his punches are wide and loopy. From what I've seen so far, they've been good enough for heavyweight, even if the better actual boxers at heavyweight are going to piece him up once he actually meets one. And, he's, again, I don't know how much of a wrestling trained background he has, but he is good at getting in on someone's body, scooping them up and dumping them on the canvas in a way that makes you worry about the integrity of the octagon floor. I mean, this guy had a couple of the loudest takedowns of the MC Arena era of the UFC in his first 2 fights. He's taking on Espino, who actually is a wrestler. We made all this noise about Rog, the Senegalese wrestler who fought for one championship last week. Juan Espino, also his background is Senegalese wrestling. He is from the Canary Islands, a Spanish speaking nation that's just off that west coast of Africa, and he comes from the same background. I won't call myself an expert on Senegalese wrestling, but I have watched some of it, and it feels like African sumo. It's trips, throws. There's some very limited type striking, and the fight, or at least the round, is over when someone's ass hits the ground. There's no groundwork to speak of. Espino has developed some groundwork to go with his impressive takedown game. He is a very heavy guy from top position. Both of his wins in the UFC, first round submissions. And as soon as that fight hit the ground, this thing was over. He actually tapped out Jeff Hughes with the women's flyweight scarf hold arm lock throw, because he just tossed the guy and then held onto it until Hughes' head was going to pop off. I don't know what else to call it. Now that I think of it, I guess they have 2 of the funnier submissions in recent UFC history in their last fight. Even though Espino is 40, he's looked really spry He doesn't have nearly as much wear on him as your average 40-year-old heavyweight. This guy did not take the Alistair Overeem or Andrei Arlovsky track to get where he is today, but he's got to start falling off at some point. And I'm picking this, even though I love Espino and I love his story, and I think just like his endlessly smiley personality is a lot of fun. I think this is going to have to be where his surprisingly good athleticism for a big guy meets Romanov's flat out good athleticism for an even bigger guy. And Romanov is a guy he's with a good camp. He's probably soaking this stuff up like a sponge. I'm picking Romanov. Well, I'm not tonight. I'm picking Romanov to turn a corner soon and become like more of a serious problem for the heavyweight division as he keeps kind of slimming down. But tonight it's going to be enough that he's going to be the one dumping Espino on the ground. And while Espino is a crushingly heavy top position grappler, we've not really seen much of what he has to offer from his back or when he's the one being taken down. We're going to find out tonight. It's not going to be much. And give me Romanov by first round. I'm going to say TKO from ground and pound. But yeah, Romanov first round stoppage.
Wow. First round. All right. I love the stat about Espino being older than Diego Sanchez, but like, I don't know if that counts, like, because Diego keeps getting reborn and getting new enlightened, and he has this is the birth of the nightmare, and then the birth of the dream, and the so.
Well, Diego then the current version of Diego Sanchez is the world's oldest 6-year-old. Then, like,
yeah. He might be like younger than like Sean O'Malley or something. I'll talk about Espino. There's not. These both guys are pretty one-dimensional. We'll say that. Like, they both want to wrestle. Espino hasn't shown much on the feet, though he is pretty light on his feet. He uses movement pretty well. We saw that in his last fight. I would say he has basic boxing, a bit unorthodox with the boxing, but he makes it work somehow because, one, people always think about his wrestling, so he lands shots based on that. We talked about on the recap show, Mackenzie Dern having unorthodox striking, but she'll land when people don't want to, go to the ground with her. I think that kind of happens with Espino a little bit. He loves his. They were talking about in his last fight on the broadcast. He loves his dipping to his left, overhand right on the other side combo, which is a little unorthodox. He'll throw a couple kicks out there, but he uses his boxing just to set up his takedowns. He likes to clinch you against the fence. He can shoot it on your hips if he has to, get a takedown that way. Though some of his entries is kind of ugly. He'll just duck his head and drive forward, which will not work against Romanov, or at least it shouldn't work against Romanov. If he gets it to the ground, it's probably from a body lock, and he does have good mat returns if he gets around your waist. But if he takes you down, he looks to advance the position, I like. And he's got 8 submission wins. So he's a submission threat. And as you mentioned, he has a classic fat guy submission with the scarf hold, a.k.a. backyard headlock, where you just grab the guy's head and squeeze. Or what you see the move at every youth wrestling tournament. And then the second grader gets off the mat crying and saying he couldn't breathe at every single match. And you gotta rub the kid on the back and say, okay, yeah, I know you couldn't breathe. That's why you lost. Move over to Romanov. He's southpaw. I haven't seen much striking on him at all. In his last fight, there wasn't much striking, but when there was, I actually thought he was losing. I thought Marcos Hajiro de Lima was kicking out his legs, but he has a great double leg. We saw that against de Lima. He can also get in the clinch, grind that way, clinch takedowns. He's got heavy top pressure, good ground and pound. He's another classic fat guy. Just looks like two guys that don't know how to wrestle. Just, I'm going to hold you down with my forearm until you passed out. I still can't believe that worked in 2020, 21, whatever it was in the UFC. I don't know. I can't remember if it was 2021 or if that was late 2020. There really is probably there's 3 likely outcomes. The first likely outcome is they grind against the clinch. We have an extremely boring 15-minute fight. The other one is we have a sloppy kickboxing match. And the third one is one of the guy gets a takedown and the other guy can't get up. Like those are really your three outcomes. Like I don't expect a on the feet kickboxing match where we're having, setups and feints and combinations. Or like I don't expect that to happen. Who wins? I have zero confidence in picking. Like because you seem extremely confident. I'm not. I'm gonna give it to Espino, and it's gonna be the dumbest reason ever. I just kind of was flipping a coin, but Espino won tough. That may take some mental toughness. I don't know. People say it does. To be in the house for 6 weeks and somehow get free food and not and have all your expenses taken care of. I don't know how that's very stressful, but that's what they claim. Give me Espino to win I think it's going to be that really ugly clinch affair. So this is my third upset pick. Give me Espino.
There we go. If dissension is what you come to these previews for, it is a good night for you because Keith and I are disagreeing strongly and like we're really mad about it. It's time for the flyweights as Tracy Cortez faces off against Justine Kish. Cortez, 8-1 overall, is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of Season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series, where she beat fellow prospect Maria Agapova. She has just fought once per year since then. She beat Vanessa Mello by unanimous decision in her UFC debut back in November 2019. Then last October beat Stephanie Egger, also by unanimous decision. She'll be taking on Kish. The 33-year-old from North Carolina is 7-3 overall. She is an even 3-3 in the UFC. She fought twice last year, winning a unanimous decision over Lucy Pudilova at UFC Fight Night Blades dos Santos in January, then getting choked out by Sabina Masso at UFC Fight Night Watterson versus Hill in September. Odds pretty strongly favor Cortez in this one. She is minus 240. You can get Kish at plus 200 as the underdog. Keith, who do you like in this one? Or if you don't like either of them, then who do you think will win?
So this is one of the fights I'm a little intrigued in. I'll start with Tracy Cortez. This is fighter that came out of the Contender Series. A lot of people are very high on her. She's a high-paced fighter, pressure striker. She's pretty elusive on her feet, pretty athletic. Though I think she avoids punches better with her footwork than she does her head movement. She doesn't really move her head. She also gets hit a lot because of her pressure style. She has good variety in her attacks. Like she'll go to the body, she'll add in kicks. She has an active jab that she works behind. She gets into the pocket and really unloads power shots. She, as I mentioned, she throws kicks, but a lot of them are naked, and that's where she gets countered. She can get hurt against a really good striker. Like Antonina Shevchenko would destroy her if she throws a naked kick on her. Solid clinch game. It actually might be her strongest point. She'll get like an underhook and just dirty box. She'll mix in takedowns with her striking. I wouldn't say she's a wrestler, though. She kind of has, she'll work for like a bear hug and get it down that way. Heavy top pressure, though. She's good at winning scrambles. She is a submission threat. She likes to attack the head, guillotines, darce chokes. That's kind of the way she likes to go. She's a weak defensive wrestler, though, and when she's been taken down, she really struggles to get up. Now, move over to Kish. Kish is a high output striker, throws combos. She likes to attack the calf kicks. Her last fight, she was doubling up the leg kicks. It was kind of fun to watch. She'd throw like an outside kick with her right leg and then spin, pivot on her foot and throw the inside kick with her left leg. She kept doing it over and over again to Sabina Mazo. That was fun to see. She also likes that Holly Holm sidekick that she does. She has her boxing style is very similar to how when I used to box. She parries a lot of punches. That's something I always like doing. So if people don't know what I mean by parrying is when someone kind of throws a punch, you go over the top of it, you kind of slap it down, and then you kind of almost ricochet off the slapping down to throw your own offense. Though she does that with a Muay Thai style where she keeps her arms very high and out. It was kind of that she was doing against Sabina Mazo, which I've never liked the Muay Thai style in MMA because it really leaves you open to takedowns and kicks to the body. she keeps her chin high. Um, and she also reaches sometimes. You don't want to reach when you're parry because it leaves if someone's throwing a feint, you're reaching towards the feint and then it leaves you open to a counter. But obviously, with why I enjoy parrying is you kind of the person thinking offensively and you hit them with a shot, so you're kind of using their offense against them. She drops her hands and she exchanges a little bit, but her dirty boxing game is pretty good in the clinch. Like she gets in the clinch. I think she'll do better in the clinch against Tracy Cortez than a lot of people think. She'll also catch a takedown. She'll mix in takedowns herself, and she's got good cardio. Like she was going hard in her last fight. Tracy Cortez is a huge favorite, and I think the betting line is way off. I think this fight is much closer than it should be. I think Tracy Cortez is almost like a 3-1 favorite. And I think maybe why I think this fight should be closer is I'm not as high on Cortez as others are. I think she's a good addition to UFC. I think she's a good prospect, but I don't see her as a top 5 fighter in the future. I'm also higher on Kish than other people think. Like, I think people look at her as like bum or low level, and I don't. I think she's got some skills. I think she's actually maybe more technically sound than Cortez. And I actually had her beating Sabina Mazo in the last fight before she get high kicked. Like I thought she was going to win that fight. Cortez is meaner. She definitely has the higher ceiling. But my theme tonight is upsets. And if Kish can use some movement, use the same high output that she did against Mazo, if she can avoid the clinch, avoid some of the wrestling. I shouldn't say avoid the clinch, but not get muscled in the clinch, not get backed up against the cage, kind of turn the corner, use the clinch to her advantage, avoid some of the wrestling exchanges, don't get stuck on bottom, and avoid the power shots, which is obviously extremely difficult. I just said a lot of things she has to do. I'm going to say she does it. Give me Kish in an extremely close fight. I'm taking Kish. This is my 4th upset, and this is my upset special. I'm taking almost a 3-1 underdog. Give me Justine Kish to pull off the biggest win of her career.
Oh, bold prediction from Keith Schillen on that one. I agree with you that the line is way off here. I think, and like you say, Cortez has, she has a high ceiling. She has plenty of promise. She's young. She's athletic. She has a lot of different weapons. But I think we collectively kind of need to tap the brakes on her. I mean, you mentioned off air that you thought Erin Blanchfield beat her at Invicta 34. I'll also roll all the way back to Invicta 28. And that card was obviously most famous for the horrible Mizuki versus Jandiroba decision. But I scored that fight for Caitlin Neal against her. And Caitlin Neal is someone who at the time was fairly promising and has yet to really progress past the local Utah scene level, which is the only reason I even know who she is. And even since the Blanchfield fight, I mean, she's beaten Maria Agapova, who obviously has had mixed results in the UFC, and then Vanessa Melo and Stephanie Egger, 2 of the lower level flyweights in the division. And I mean, she's not even finished any of them. Kish has been fighting much higher level competition for much longer. I mean, she beat Randa Marcos and Nina, at the time, Ansaroff, now Nunes, right as she came into the UFC. You pointed out she was doing really well against Mazo until she got until right before the finish. Kish is definitely a better striker at this point, has more weapons, throws in combination better footwork on the feet. And if this fight starts and Kish is using lateral movement, she's throwing her low kicks early and often, I'm going to want to flip to your upset pick really, really quick. I mean, probably within 60 seconds. But right now, I'm still going with Cortez just based on my thought that if and when Cortez wants it on the floor, she's going to be able to get it there. Just give me Tracy Cortez by decision in a fight where, she's probably going to get some stuff she doesn't like in the first round, and maybe late in the first round, early in the second, she's going to do the Vettori versus Holland thing and be like, why am I hanging out in my opponent's wheelhouse? Take her down, start taking her down. I don't think she'll get the finish, but give me Tracy Cortez by decision over Justine Kish. But for the record, you are the braver and smarter guy for making the upset pick. The UFC Vegas 24 main card powers on with a lightweight scrap between Luis Pena and Alex Munoz. Pena, the 27-year-old from Little Rock, Arkansas, fighting out of St. Charles MMA, is 8-3 overall. He is 3-3 in the UFC. He fought twice last year, winning a unanimous decision over Steve Garcia at UFC Fight Night Benavidez versus Figueiredo in February, then came back at UFC Poirier versus Hooker in June and lost by third round guillotine choke submission to Kama Worthy. He'll be taking on Munoz, who will be seeking to bounce back from his unsuccessful UFC debut. Munoz is 31 years old, 6-1 overall, debuted in the UFC last August and lost a unanimous decision to Nasrat Haqparast at UFC Fight Night Lewis versus Olenek. Munoz is a slight underdog out there. You can catch him at even money or even looks like plus 110. Pena is out there minus 125 to minus 130. Keith, who do you like in this one and why?
So this is one of the fights that I'm pretty intrigued on the card. I think it's a close fight. I'll start with Pena. I didn't change much from my notes of when I last saw him, so it might sound very repetitive. He's a southpaw, works behind a jab, throws. He does throw one punch at a time, which I don't like. He also lacks power. It seems like another theme I've been saying all night is arm punching. His kicks, though, are his best weapon. He has long push kicks. He has a lot of defensive holes in his striking. He avoids strikes by backing straight up. He also turns his head to avoid strikes instead of trying to slip or roll with the punches, and he's going to turn into like a high kick once. He's going to get blasted. He's a good wrestler, I would say. He shoots doubles. He uses his long arms, like he'll extend his arms. He gets his arms around his opponent's legs, so he kind of closes the distance with his arms well. I mean, I shouldn't say does that well. It just comes naturally. He just moves his arms out. He's relentless to get the takedown, though sometimes he doesn't set it up. He'll shoot from too far away, and he's a weak defensive wrestler. And this comes from guys not spending time in the wrestling room. It comes from drilling your takedowns before jiu-jitsu class, but not actually wrestling. He's on top. He's got solid top control. He has good top control due to his long legs. Like if he can get on your back and throw his long legs, it's very hard to get him out. He has a submission threat, though he was submitted by Kama Worthy, and I think it was his last fight. He was submitted by Kama Worthy, which you can't like. Move over to Munoz. Munoz southpaw. His hands are pretty fast, though I would say he needs to work on his technique. I think he's got some decent hand speed from just being a good athlete. I would say he's a very basic boxer. Doesn't really cut angles. Doesn't really understand distance with his striking. He's just a good athlete. Now, he's an elite wrestler, though. He wrestled at Ohio State University. He was a prep school national champion. He trained under Olympic gold medalist Kenny Monday. He's a team alpha male wrestling coach. Blazing fast entries, gets in deep, quickly turns the corner. So I talked about, who was it when I was talking to? Tony Gravely. I was talking about Tony Gravely getting to the second level. Munoz has a different style. Where Gravely will drive through it. Munoz gets on the hips and then he cuts an angle. And then it turns the legs. They call it the windshield wiper. You hear Daniel Cormier talk about it a lot. That's his style. So he kind of comes in and then it's like a V comes in and he turns the corner while Gravely has the one drive through. And either way is good. Whatever works for you is great. He also chain wrestles together, so he could shoot on one leg and then come all the way across the other side. Something like Khabib. Now, I'm not calling him Khabib, but that's what Khabib was always great at. Khabib wasn't great about driving through the hips. He wasn't even great about turning the corner. He was great about chain wrestling, and that's actually something that Munoz does good. Though surprisingly, he struck, and I think this might say more about Haqparast. He got Haqparast down, but he struggled to keep him down, and he struggled to get takedowns as the fight went deeper on. I think that some would have been an adrenaline dump. I think he took the fight on short notice too. So some of those things, I'll give him a pass. So as far as a prediction, Pena is a long and lengthy guy. He's going to give people problems just based on his length. However, I see him get out wrestled by Kama Worthy, who isn't known for his wrestling. I expect Munoz to do the same. I think this fight could look a lot like the Matt Favola fight, who does have a wrestling background, who isn't I don't think Favola is the level of wrestler that Munoz is, and Favola was able to get a lot of takedowns on Pena. So I expect the same. So I think Munoz wins his first UFC fight, and give me him by unanimous decision.
Beautiful. I'm so happy for a couple of the things that you said. Yeah, Pena is a guy. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has the USA wrestling logo tattooed on him. Which tells you, regardless of how good or not good he is, it's something he identifies himself with. Yeah, he's a surprisingly good offensive wrestler, and I think it almost covers up his deficiencies as a defensive wrestler sometimes. Like, if you're 6'3" at 155 pounds, your defensive wrestling is just going to be a liability. Like, when a guy doesn't even have to bend over to get to your hips, that's, it's going to be a liability. But he is a surprisingly good offensive wrestler. He uses his long arms well there. And then obviously once he gets someone down, his back control, can be very, very tight. The thing about Pena is the fights he's lost in the UFC for the most part have been the ones where he was not the better wrestler. Like, even going all the way back to the Michael Trezano fight, and I think it was the TUF finale, or at least their first fight out of TUF. I don't think of Trezano as like a lights out wrestler, but just the fact that Pena couldn't take him down informed everything else that happened in the fight. And considering that the main fault I would find with Munoz's game is that he's not willing enough to use his wrestling sometimes, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter if he's taking Pena down. If Pena can't take him down, Munoz will do better everywhere else. And because of that, even though Pena is the slight favorite, I feel like you appear to, that this stylistic matchup favors Munoz greatly. Pena, everything else, including his striking, suffers when he doesn't feel he has the safety outlet to be able to take the guy down, anytime he's getting something that he doesn't like the taste of on the feet. Give me Munoz in that mild upset by decision as well. We now head for the middleweight division with a matchup between Abdul Razak Alhassan and Jacob Malkoun. Alhassan, the 35-year-old fighting out of Fortis MMA, is 10-3 overall. He is 3-3 since joining the UFC. He is currently on a 2-fight losing streak, both last year, having lost to Munir Lazzez by a pretty lopsided unanimous decision back in July, and then been shockingly knocked out in 30 seconds by Kalen Chaos Williams at UFC Fight Night Felder versus Dos Anjos in November. He is taking on Malkoun. The 25-year-old Australian is 4-1 overall. He is 0-1 since making his debut in the UFC last October, where he lost by knockout to Phil Hawes in just 15 or 20 seconds. That was at UFC 254. Alhassan, a strong favorite here, minus 300. Malkoun is out there at plus 250 as the underdog. Abdul Razak Alhassan, I know his nickname is Judo Thunder, but he's kind of in that Sokaju category for me, where I'm not saying he isn't a credentialed judo practitioner, but when I look at his fights, I see about a 5-to-1 ratio of murderous overhand rights to actual judo trips or throws. Like, I assume they gave him the name Judo Thunder like in the gym before his first fight, because he is a knockout striker by trade and by profession. It was a bad look for him last year. I mean, he blew weight badly once. He basically gave a showcase to Munir Lazzez, just as Lazzez was a niftier striker, like just a much more technical striker, and Alhassan couldn't touch him. Like, Lazzez just completely embarrassed him on the feet. And then Chaos Williams, just that little collision where Williams threw the beautiful short little right hand and just completely iced him. So he's coming back from that, and
he was accused of rape.
I mean, he was accused of
No, I'm just
rape.
talking about what
Yeah,
was.
yeah, like talk about a shitty year or two for a man. And like full disclosure, I'm friends with his friend, and I'm friends with one of his primary training partners in Alex Morono, and he says, yeah, it was a rough year or two for a guy that he at least says is a good guy. And it's worth mentioning that those rape charges, it's not just that they were like kind of dropped in a cloud of smoke because there wasn't enough evidence. They were proven to be like flat out fabricated and fictitious. So, considering how quick the media is to report when there's an accusation and then just kind of let it go if it goes up in smoke, worth mentioning that they were proven to be like maliciously false. Anyway, he's taking on, and he's moving up to 185 at this point. He's a guy very muscular, clearly, very clearly had a tough time making the welterweight limit. He's moving up to 185. Based on what his game goes on, he'll be just as well off. Like if his heater lands, it's going to knock out a 185 just as easily as a 170. And more importantly, he's taking on a guy in Jacob Malkoun that, I don't mean this to be mean, because for all I know, he has great potential as a fighter. But as far as I can tell, he is primarily in the UFC because he's a primary friend and training partner of your headliner tonight, Robert Whittaker. Like that's it. That's the only reason that I can see that a 4-0 guy with kind of the eyeball test that he had in those 4 fights would be fighting in the UFC right now. Otherwise, he's a guy, and I sound like a broken record here, a guy that a couple more wins, and it might be cool to see him on the Contender Series at 7-0, with a little more seasoning. But instead, he got the UFC debut. He got absolutely iced by Phil Hawes in his debut. And guess what? Phil Hawes does a lot of the same things that Abdul Razak Alhassan does, just without bothering to try and trick you with the judo nickname. He just calls himself Megatron because he's going to blow your shit up. I fully expect someone's shit to get blown up tonight. And yeah, these odds are right about on to me. Malkoun is a good striker. Like he doesn't have quite the same obvious I came from karate stance or style as Whittaker, but he is he's a good kickboxer, but he's not particularly fast, not quick. I expect Alhassan to get in after a pretty quick feeling out process, smash him with something big, and either just knock him cold or knock him down and finish it up on the ground. But give me Abdul Razak Alhassan to get back to winning ways with a first round KO.
Yeah. I don't want to jump in about the Alhassan and the rape thing. I was just pointing out that it was a bad year from him. I was not saying I believe those accusations. It's been proven not guilty. I'm glad that was not true. So I just want to throw that out there. And I wasn't trying to make a joke of rape. I was just saying that that's a bad year if you get accused of rape. As in, Deshaun Watson is going through a very similar situation. Regardless of what happens, it's a bad year for Deshaun Watson.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the good with Alhassan. He's explosive. I mean, that's the first thing I think everyone thinks about. He's fast. He's got huge power. I love what he does, and this is somehow I made this about me twice now in my boxing. That was, not world class by any means, but he does something that I used to always like doing. When a guy pillars, and what I mean by pillaring, I think about almost like the Tito Ortiz classic cover up behind your hands. He likes to grab that stationary target of the hand and then pull and wrap the punch around it, which I absolutely love. Like, like when you play with your I like doing that, and you pull on the hand and like kind of hit him with the other hand. That's what he likes to do. But when he does it, it's a extremely thudding punch that can put out a friggin' rhino. When he throws a combination, he can sneak in a high kick inside his combination. He did it against Munir in his last fight. Now, he doesn't check leg kicks. And I somehow was going to. So let me jump to the negative. I said I'd talk about the good, so let's talk about the negative. He doesn't check leg kicks. He punched himself out against Munir Lazez. You kept talking about how one-sided it was. It was one-sided from about 3 minutes in the fight and on. But the first 3 minutes, or 2.5, I don't know exactly how far it was, Alhassan was putting it on. Was just almost put him out. But what I like about Alhassan, despite getting tired very early, he was still somewhat competitive. Like I don't think it was as much of a lashing as it. I mean, it wasn't. It was a decisive victory, but it wasn't a stop the fight kind of thing. He did get one punch knocked out in his last fight against Cass Williams, which makes you worry. Going up a weight class, does that help? Get a little more, water in the brain area. That could help. I agree with you. I think his power will go with him. I think he has a Anthony Rumble Johnson feel to him. Like I feel like the power will go with him. It might even be better. You talk about the judo background, the judo name. He did wrestle a little bit in his last fight, even though he never ever wrestles. It was nice to see him mix that in. And I think if you wrestle a little bit, that's actually going to open up your hands more. I think people start thinking about that. So that's the the good and the bad for Alhassan. Now move over to Malkoun. I haven't seen too much film on him because there's not that much film on him, and his UFC debut was like 8 seconds or whatever it was. It was something stupid. He's got decent hand speed from what I've seen. He attacks with combos. He loves his overhand right, throws a little too much. Has some decent pop. There's nothing spectacular on his feet though. He constantly attacks straight on the line. It's always similar. He doesn't cut angles. He seems very inexperienced. He seems like the guy, and I don't remember if I said this last time or if I just thought it, but I should have said last time we broke him down. He attacks. He thinks he's thinking. It shows that he's thinking, and that's not good when you actually want to flow when you're striking. Like it shouldn't be like you're thinking about a combo, and he's like, okay, I learned this combo. Let me throw it right now, exactly without any setup, just punching the guy's forearms. I feel like that's what he does on the feet. Now, I haven't seen too much on the ground, but there's a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition film of him out there. So I'm just going to assume that he's pretty good on the ground based on that. I'm not saying he's, Ryan Hall on the ground. He does look to advanced position. His wrestling is ugly, though. I mean, he shoots from way too far away. This is from the MMA fights that I've seen. Shoots from far too away. No setups. So as far as the prediction goes, first of all, I'm like, why does the matchmakers hate Malkoun? I mean, like you said, he probably shouldn't be in the UFC, but besides probably shouldn't be in the UFC, you put him against Phil Hawes, and then you followed up with Alhassan. This is a terrible matchup on the feet. As long as Alhassan's chin isn't completely gone and Malkoun isn't some wizard on the mat that I don't know about, I think this is going to be a really, really rough night. I say Alhassan's too fast, hits too hard, and I think he puts out Malkoun in brutal fashion. I don't like taking a huge, huge favorite as my lock of the night, so I'm going to be extremely confident, and I say Alhassan wins by first round. I'll say knockout is my lock, but he probably puts him out in the first round. Give me Alhassan by first round knockout.
Third from the top on the main card of this ESPN offering is a heavyweight matchup between the ageless Andrei Arlovski and Chase Sherman. Sherman, the 31-year-old Mississippian, is 15-6 overall. He is 3-5 across two separate stints in the UFC. He returned to the UFC last May, knocking out Isaac Villanueva, who stepped up on short notice in the second round of their matchup at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Teixeira. He is taking on Arlovski, the 42-year-old who has been around seemingly forever. He is one of the final fighters in the UFC who fought in the pre-Zuffa era, meaning he's come and gone a few times, but he literally was in the UFC before Dana White. He is 30-20 with 2 no contests in his 2-decade career. Across multiple different stints in the octagon, he is 19-14 with 1 no contest. He has seen the highest highs and the lowest lows. Obviously, he's a former UFC champion. There was a time when I don't think you could argue against him being one of the top 3 heavyweights in the sport. There was a time when he was probably one of the top 10. Well, he was definitely one of the top 10, if not one of the top 5 fighters in the history of the heavyweight division. But he's been around for a long, long time. And we've seen him. He's had 2 different 4-fight losing streaks, 1 5-fight losing streak with winning streaks in between. He's faced many of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And in this presumably final act of his career, he's now still competitive against, some of the better, if not absolutely elite fighters of this era. He fought most recently just back in February, losing via second round rear naked choke to the highly regarded Tom Aspinall. That snapped a modest 2-fight win streak over Felipe Lins and Tanner Boser. Arlovsky steps in on short notice. I think about 2 weeks ago, we found out that Parker Porter would not be able to compete on this card, and Arlovsky stepped in on the fairly short turnaround and very short notice. He is the slight underdog here. Not only is he a plug-in replacement for Parker Porter, he is an underdog to Chase Sherman, who is below 500 in the UFC. Arlovsky the slight favorite. Respect for our elders. Arlovsky minus 175, Sherman around plus 150 as the underdog. Keith, I'll throw this one to you first. And just for shits and giggles, how would you have felt about the Porter versus Sherman matchup? Just 30 seconds, wild guess, and then give me your pick for this one.
I don't like making picks without doing film study, but I'll give my first initial reaction, because everyone, when you see a fight announcement, you always have your initial reaction, who you think will win. I probably would have went with Chase Sherman, no tape study. As far as this matchup, I have no idea how I feel about this matchup. I honestly don't remember that Parker Porter was booked, which is surprising, being that he's a local guy to me. That I am surprised that I forgot about Parker Porter. But I love that Parker Porter was replaced by Andre Arlovsky. I just think that's so funny. A guy that I viewed as a regional fighter forever got replaced by former UFC heavyweight champion. Andre Arlovsky, I'll say this, and I like to be honest and transparent with the listeners. I think people could tell I do a lot of film study. I mean, I think they can tell both of us do a lot of film study. I didn't do any film study on Andre Arlovsky for this fight. I just was kind of sick of watching Andre Arlovsky. I didn't want to see him get knocked out by Tom Aspinall again. And so I didn't do any film study on Andre Arlovsky for this one. So it's going to sound very similar to my breakdown of my. So what I do is I have my notes, and then I kind of update if something new joins out to me. I don't want to repeat the same things, so I take some things out, reword things. Arlovsky's a counter striker. He's a boxer. He has a high guard. He's actually one of the most classic guys with the high guard. He's actually one of the guys who's been very good at it. He's a tight boxer, and what I mean by that is everything's tight. The hooks are tight. The overhands are tight. They're not looping outside. He doesn't lose power because of his the tightness. Though his hand speed has slowed down, and has slowed down greatly for a long time. He has really changed his strategy of attacks. He attacks with low output, which I actually think is smart. One, it protects his chin. And also, as you get older, I doubt his cardio is as strong as it was in his heyday. So I think he's become a very intelligent fighter, and I think he knows his physical limitations, and he really does get the best out of it as he possibly can at this point. We talked about his chin, like being great, being gone, being great, being gone. It seemed like every time we gave up on his chin, it comes back. Who knows in this fight what's going to be. That said, I'm pretty confident that his power is gone, and I'm pretty confident that it's gone forever. He hasn't got a KO since he beat Travis Brown 6 years ago. I said that last time we were breaking down him. I'm saying it again. It has been 17 fights since then, and he hasn't got a knockout in his last 17 fights. He likes to clinch now. That's become his game. I mean, if you go back to he came from a Sambo background, so that could always be his game, but, he didn't really. I felt like when Arlovsky first showed up on the scene, we saw a lot of his grappling, and then it kind of went away for a really long time. And I feel like we're starting to see some grappling again with him, and I think that's smart because he's a good wrestler. He's a good technically sound wrestler. He's a good grappler. There's no major holes in his grappling. I wouldn't say he's he's not Josh Barnett where he's going to grab an arm and submit you, or Fabricio Verdum. He's not elite grappler, but he can definitely win grappling matches. Now, Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman has really changed his game a lot since, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna call this good Chase Sherman. Like his second stint is good Chase Sherman compared to bad Chase Sherman. The good Chase Sherman, he uses a lot of feints, which I like. He's got tight boxing. Similar to what I talked about Arlovski, everything stays tight. He has a stationary target, which I don't like. He stands directly in front of his opponent, no lateral movement. But he does that because his power shots is his best shot. His left hook is his best punch. He likes that mid, I wouldn't say pocket, but that mid range, like just at the extent of leg kicks. He loves his stepping knees. He got some really good stepping knees against Villanueva in his last fight. He landed a huge elbow in close against Villanueva. Calf kicks was one of his targets in that fight. And he's also become a builder. Like I went back to some of his island fights and Chase Sherman gets the output increases as each minute goes by, which is something I like to see. Now, as far as the prediction goes, I really want to take Chase Sherman. I really do. I mean, it's hard to realize how much he's grown because he's faced really low-level competition. His debut was his return, I should say, was against Ike Villanueva, a blown-up light heavyweight who probably isn't UFC level anyways. I mean, we probably need to redefine UFC level, but generally speaking, he's a classic journeyman. You're at a fight and Ike Villanueva, yeah, he's solid, but there's a ceiling to him. So it's hard to really know where Chase Sherman has it, like how much has he improved. And I still remember the guy that was the absolute bottom of the heavyweight division. And I got to ask myself this question. Has Arlovski dropped that far down? I don't know. I mean, he beat Felipe Lins recently. He beat, who's the guy with the missing the tooth and the mullet? And what's his name?
Bozer.
Tanner Bozer. Yeah, he beat Tanner Bozer recently. So has he fallen that far to lose to Chase Sherman? I don't think so. I think he's wise enough to still get a win. I think he might see a lot of clinching. I think he might sneak in some takedowns. And I think it's going to be a slow affair. And Arlovski's just going to be more crafty and be smarter and win a really boring fight that we forget about. So give me Andre Arlovski in a decision in a snooze fest.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that Arlovski hasn't knocked out anybody since Travis Brown, 17 fights ago, because one of the things that I was about to bring up is that in the last 5 years, his last 15 fights, the only people that have knocked him out have been Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I mean, for a guy that 10 years ago we were saying, oh, Arlovski's done as a top-level fighter, a stiff breeze would knock him out. As you pointed out, his new kind of ultra-conservative game plan, his new style, his greater willingness to use his wrestling and grappling, his much lower output. It's, for the most part, it has worked. He's only really been knocked out by maybe the greatest heavyweight ever and two guys that knock everybody out. With Sherman, every time I think about Sherman and remember fights of his that I've watched or watch him fight, I always ask why. I just always find myself asking, why isn't Chase Sherman better than he is? Just based on just being a real live big bodied heavyweight. Like, he is 6'4" and he is a not fat 250 pounds. And for a guy that size, he moves pretty smoothly. He's probably wouldn't beat Surreal Gone in a decathlon, but he's kind of got that Martin Tybura, Matt Mitrione, you're actually kind of light on your feet for a 6'4", 250 pound guy, huh? He's got that. And yeah, despite that, he's never really broken through past the okay at the UFC level. I agree with you that the Ike Villanueva fight didn't teach us much. I love Ike. He's a Houston guy. I see him around, but I'll be honest, if not for COVID needing, leading the UFC to need bodies on short notice, Ike Villanueva wouldn't have made it to the UFC when he did. And if not for the fact that he literally just stayed in Vegas after that, he probably wouldn't have gotten more than one fight. Like, he has 3 fights in the UFC because he went and stayed in Vegas and said, I'll fight at heavyweight or light heavyweight on any notice. You just let me know.
And good for him for doing that.
Hey, and he was rewarded with.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, and he was rewarded for that with actually getting his first win in the UFC. He's got something that nobody can ever take away from him. However, he's not a barometer of whether Chase Sherman is a top 15 heavyweight. He just isn't. You're right in that Sherman is a builder and has become more of a builder recently. Despite the fact that he's big and athletic, he's not really a one-shot knockout guy. So that's not something Arlovski will need to worry about. But Sherman's shown a good gas tank, even back in his first stint in the UFC, and kind of, I think this is going to be kind of a moment where Arlovski slips another gear, where we're going to look back at this fight and be like, you know what? Chase Sherman beat him, won every round without really doing anything spectacular. Arlovski fought the best he could. He didn't expose himself. He didn't give away rounds. Just Chase Sherman, the 2021 version of Chase Sherman is a little better than the 2021 version of Andrei Arlovski. Father Time still undefeated. Chase Sherman doesn't quite get to 500 in the UFC, but he gets right on the doorstep of it. He will go to 4-5 in the UFC, handing Andrei Arlovski a decision loss. Give me Sherman. I mean, I'm not going to say, hey, it's my upset, special, since he's like plus 150. But of the upsets I've picked, this might be the one that I feel most sure about. The co-main event of UFC Vegas 24 is a lightweight scrap between the veteran Jeremy Stephens and Drakkar Klose. Stephens, one of the 2 or 3 most prolific fighters in UFC history at the moment, is 34 years old, 28-18 with 1 no contest overall. He is 15-17 with 1 no contest across a UFC career that has spanned the lightweight as well as the featherweight divisions. Most recently, he had been competing at featherweight and has been mired in a frankly miserable run, albeit against some of the best fighters in the division. He had a loss to Kelvin last year at UFC 249. Prior to that, he had 2 fights against Yair Rodriguez. The first ended in a no contest via accidental eye poke in the opening seconds, but he lost a straightforward unanimous decision in the rematch. Prior to that, he lost to Zabit Magomed and Jose Aldo. You have to go all the way back to February 2018, so over 3 years ago, for his last win in the UFC. He is stepping back up to 155 pounds to take on Klose. The 33-year-old from Michigan is 11-2-1 overall. He is 5-2 in the UFC. He fought just once last year, losing a second round knockout to Beneil Dariush at UFC 248 last March. That ended a 3-fight win streak for Klose over Christos Giagos, Bobby Green, and Lando Venata. Despite the fact that it's Stephens stepping up in weight, and despite the difference in their recent records, Stephens is the slight favorite. He is out there at minus 140, where you can get Klose at plus 120 or plus 125 as the underdog. Keith, who do you like in this fight? How do you think it goes? And, let us know.
So, as much as I ragged on this card, and it's not a good card, I'm not going to stop backing out of that now. There is some intriguing matchups. I feel like there's some storylines. I think Jeremy Stephens trying to save his career, moving back up to lightweight is intriguing. I think he kind of did it a little too late, but and then Drakkar Klose, he's got a good rec in the UFC. He was doing well against Beneil Dariush. I'm actually intrigued by this matchup. I'm not intrigued enough to be excited if this gets boosted to the main event, if something happens to the main event, but this is not a terrible matchup. Should it be co-main event? No, I feel like much better if there's just a regular main card fight. So we'll start with Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens, We've broken him down a million times. People have seen him a million times. As you mentioned, this is his 34th fight in the UFC. You know what you get with him at this point. And moving up a weight class, I don't think really changes his style. He's a pressure counter striker. He uses feints very well to draw out attacks where he wants to hold his ground and create a brawl. I would say his power is overrated. I think it can increase moving up to lightweight. I just think generally speaking that increases for a lot of guys. But I do think his power is overrated because he telegraphs his shots and he loses some of his power. That said, I think the narrative has been for a long time, Jeremy Stephens' power was so amazing, and then the pendulum got swung to it's overrated. He's not that big of a hard hitter. It was like, well, we got to balance that. So I'm trying to balance that because all you got to do is ask Josh Emmett how serious Jeremy Stephens' power is. I think he can tell you. He's got a great overhand right, and he's got that uppercut. Like those two of his big shots. He attacks with some of the best calf kicks in all of MMA, or I should just say the whole leg, not just the calves. Upper leg, I should say. He's a little flat-footed. He's a bit of a stationary target. He stands directly in front of his opponent, and at this time, you face a guy like Yair Rodriguez who's so fast, so elusive, so well at judging distance. Like you can't be a stationary target. Like the days of the Rampage Jackson standing right in front of you, that has passed. Like you have to be more technically sound. He keeps his head on the center line, which was obviously a negative thing. He's very heavy on his lead leg, which leaves him open to, obviously I always talk about this all the time. If you have your lead leg, it's going to set up your left hook. If you're in the orthodox stance, having lead leg, you have more power. It's mostly for your left hook, but also it leaves you open to the leg kicks, which is really surprising considering Jeremy Stephens knows how important the calf kicks is. It's such a huge part of his game. He's also been hurt to the body a lot recently. I think with the Jose Aldo fight, Jose Aldo hurt him with that body shot. Yair Rodriguez, I was there in Boston covering for Shirt when Yair Rodriguez dropped him with a body shot. So that's the striking. Now, starting the grappling, and I always think clinch in for grappling. Jeremy Stephens is a good clinch striker because he's very physically strong. Now, regardless if we think his punching power is overrated, Jeremy Stephens is just a strong human being. If he can get in the clinch, he can hurt you that way, and he's mean. He likes it in there. He can land elbows in there. Like, he likes that game. No, he's not a great wrestler. I wouldn't say he's not even a wrestler at all. He doesn't wrestle. He doesn't look for takedowns. He struggles to, avoid takedowns. We've seen the list of the amount of people that have taken Jeremy Stephens down. This broadcast would go really long if I kept naming them. He also struggles to get back up, but he's got incredible submission defense. Think about all the fights he's been in the UFC for 12 years since he was last submitted, which is incredible when you think about the names of fighters that Jeremy Stephens has faced. Like, not only has he fought in the UFC, but he's fought studs. He's got very good ground and pound though. If you're willing to try to take Jeremy Stephens down, you have to understand that there's a chance a scramble can ensue and you're underneath him. And if you're underneath Jeremy Stephens, that's a scary person to be underneath. I think about Yair Rodriguez was kind of clowning on him, and Yair Rodriguez almost was stopped with the Jeremy Stephens ground and pound in their fight. He also, of everything about Jeremy Stephens, and I said this, I believe last time we broke down one of his fights, is he does not get enough credit for his cardio. Because when you think of guys who throw hard, they tend to slow down. And that is not the case with Jeremy Stephens. We haven't seen him go 25 minutes I don't remember the last time he was in a 25-minute matchup where he actually went that far. But we've seen him go 15 minutes, and he goes 15 minutes hard, throwing power shots. So he's dangerous throughout the whole 15 minutes, and he's got the heart. No matter how bad you beat him up, I keep going back to the Yair Rodriguez fight. No matter how bad you beat him up, he's going to keep going for it. Now, move over to Gerald close. Now, he's a counter striker, too, which we could have a lot of staring where both guys are kind of waiting to see if the other one will, take the lead. He's also a bit flat-footed himself. But he throws straight shots. His punches are straight down the middle. He steps in his shots, and he's really starting to come into his power. We take his last fight against Beneil Dariush. Now, of course, he was on the end of a incredible knockout, but he had moments of it. He rocked Beneil Dariush, and we know how well Beneil Dariush is doing right now. He tends to throw a little from his hips, which leaves him open to counters. But calf kicks, we talk about Jeremy Stevens, calf kicks have started to become a game of Drakkar Klose. He's also a very physically strong dude. He's big for the weight class. I mean, he's not the guy that, like, Jeremy Stevens is the guy that he walks in a room and you see his strength. Like, he's got big muscles. He's what every 22-year-old guy wants to look like as they're walking in the club. That's not Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose has that brute strength. He's got like farmer's strength. He's got like the Matt Hughes strength where you see it. And he fights that way too. Like he will fight ugly clinch battle. He'll land good elbows in close. I think about his fight against Mark DeCasey. That was a fight where he just got in close and just wore him out. And he's more of a clinch wrestler and a body lock guy than he drives through your hips. Like he'll grab you, grind on you, and then take you down with like a back trip. When he was taken down, he gave up his back against Beneil Dariush. You remember Dariush had his back in the first round, but he was hard to submit. And Dariush is an elite grappler, and he found a way to fight him off his back and fight off the submission. Now, the other thing about Drakkar Klose that I'm worried about is his chin. I mean, he was knocked out by Dariush. Like, is he going to be gun shy? Has he recovered? You know, we've seen guys, all it takes, you only have so many shots in your button. Some guys, like Andrei Arlovski, have 2,000 punches to that button. Some guys have 20. You know, you don't know where Drakkar Klose falls in that. And then you think about it, he got knocked out in his last match. Is he going to be gun shy against a guy like Jeremy Stevens, who's known, for being a knockout puncher? This is a really, really tough fight. This is my fight of the night pick. Even though I said, you know why it's my fight of the night? I don't know if it's going to be the most entertaining, but it's the one that I had the hardest time picking. And that has made me really intrigued because there's so many question marks. Is Jeremy Stevens still a top level fighter? Is Drakkar Klose ready to take a step up? What will we see? And that has made me intrigued. And you know what? I'm just going to take the younger guy. I think Jeremy Stevens have not fought someone in a long time that can match his physical strength. He's moved up in weight class, so he's going to lose some of that physical strength in that. I think Klose is going to get some moments in the clinch. I think he might land some shots. I think he might target the body that we've seen Jeremy Stevens. So give me Drakkar Klose, and I think it's going to be a war. And he's not going to take Jeremy Stevens out, but I'll say it goes to decision. Give me Drakkar Klose by, I'm going to say split decision. Now I want to say something real quick before you jump in. And shout out to our buddy Jay Petrie, who's absolutely fantastic. He filled in for me last week. He said something on the breakdown show, and I want to explain why I pick split decisions. He says he doesn't pick split decisions because he doesn't want to guess at what people are thinking, which 100% understand what he's coming at. The reason why I pick split decisions is basically and we're coming from two different perspectives. It's my way of saying this is going to be extremely close that people are going to debate it. That's what when I usually say split decision. So.
No, I completely agree. That's actually one spot where I don't agree necessarily with Jay, even though he's my boy, because you can look at a fight in advance and be like, you know what, that fight is just going to have some individual rounds that are going to be really hard to score.
Yeah.
Where probably even just the three official Sherdog scorers won't agree on some of the rounds, and let alone the judges that who knows what the hell is going on in their head. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it may not be literally that I'm saying it's going to be a split decision, but it's just shorthand for it's going to be really one close. Of those fights. Yeah, it's going to be really close, and even just individual rounds, will be really close. It's funny. I agree with you on all of your individual assessments of kind of these fighters' strengths and weaknesses, their fight styles, their history, and what we can learn from it. And yet, I'm going to come to conclusions that are completely different than yours, because I'm actually not confident this will be a fight of the night candidate. I can see this as a fight where both guys might end up a little tentative on the feet. Drakkar Klose, early in his career, he was really good at using the clinch to smother people who wanted to strike with him from distance. Your Mark Jacasey, Lando Venata, types. He doesn't do it quite as much anymore, but he's got something, and maybe it's just he hits harder than it looks like, but he's got something that makes people just not want to open up on him fully. You can't really tell from Bobby Green, because Bobby Green will just go 2 minutes without throwing a punch just because he's Bobby Green. But I noticed it in the Giagos and even the Dariush fight. And if Stevens is concerned about his chin, Close could really slow him down. And then obviously Stevens is the same way. I think we started, I think, to overestimate or overrate, or at least the UFC booth started to overstate his one punch knockout power, because he had just a couple of really impressive early ones, like Rafael dos Anjos is someone that he iced. There were a couple of them. He looked like, but then, it was 10 years later and the UFC was still saying, he just needs to touch your chin once, which isn't true, but it is true that he has a kind of power that everything he throws hurts. Like his clinch knees, elbows, like little short punches, they clearly hurt. Even if his punches aren't like one shot, one hitter quitter type punches, they hurt. He has power. He's a super strong guy. And even at 34 with all the miles on him, he's still quick. He still has fast hands. I do wonder what he'll look like at lightweight after all these years. But then again, I shouldn't wonder, because he was closer to lightweight than to featherweight in the Kattar fight. So, he blew weight in that fight by 5 pounds, I think. I'm going to say that Stevens isn't as shot as I think he is, based on 5 fights in a row against some of the very best fighters at featherweight, and that moving up in weight will be a good move for him here. I think it might shore up some of the problems he's had. It'll instantly shore up the problem he had of missing weight, but his gas tank, which has always been pretty good, will stay good. His chin will be better. And again, the kind of power he has, I think, he's proven that it's effective against lightweights. He knocked Rafael dos Anjos the hell out, but it will remain effective against lightweights. The odds are close on this one, no pun intended, and I think they're about right. I do slightly favor Stevens in this one. Give me Stevens by decision, and unlike you, I am in no way confident this is going to be a great fight. We might see a lot of clinching that actually needs to be split up by the ref, because there's just not enough offense going on, and there might be a few staring matches on the feet, but we'll see. That brings us to the main event of the evening, a very high stakes middleweight matchup between Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. 2 men with, if I may say, quite a lot in common. Both are winners of the Ultimate Fighter, who came more or less out of nowhere to beat more heralded fighters. Both of them are former welterweights who have found their greatest success at middleweight, the difference being that Whittaker chose to move up and Gastelum was forced to do so. Both of them have been around and been contender level fighters for long enough that it's kind of surprising that they're 29 and 30 years old respectively. However, the similarities kind of end there, as the two of them are on slightly different tracks in the last year or two. Whittaker, the man we call the Reaper, or Bobby Knuckles, 30 years old, native New Zealander fighting out of Australia. He is 22-5 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 13-3 since winning the Ultimate Fighter, the Smashes. That was the UK versus Australia season. He is, of course, the former UFC middleweight champion. He lost that title to Israel Adesanya in devastating fashion at UFC 243 in October of 2019. He has bounced back since then with unanimous decision wins over Darren Till in July of last year and Jared Cannonier in October of last year. He takes on Gastelum. The Ultimate Fighter Season 17 winner is 29 years old, from Arizona, but fighting out of King's MMA in LA. He is 16-6 with 1 no contest in his mixed martial arts career. He is 11-6 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He fought most recently at UFC 258 just 2 months ago, taking a unanimous decision over the up-and-coming Ian Heinisch. That snapped a 3-fight losing streak for Gastelum that, even though it came against very, very high-level opposition, nonetheless left some of us wondering if he was all washed up before age 30. He lost to Jack Hermanson by a very quick heel hook submission last July. He lost a split decision to Darren Till at UFC 244 in November of 2019. And he lost a unanimous decision to Israel Adesanya in their title fight at UFC 236 back in April of 2019 in one of the best fights of that year. Odds in this one favor Whittaker pretty substantially. He is a -250 favorite. Gastelum around +210 as the underdog. Keith, the winner of this fight, even though both of these guys have lost to Israel Adesanya, has a decent chance of being the next guy to fight Israel Adesanya, especially given that Marvin Vettori didn't exactly do much to, put his stamp on that next title shot himself. Tell me who you think is going to win this fight and how you think it'll play out, but also tell me which of these guys you think would have a better chance against Adesanya in a rematch.
Oof.
And if there's any.
Well, okay, so all right, so I'll start with who I think would do best against Adesanya, and that goes with kind of one of the underrated storylines, or the under the radar storylines, and that's, I would say, Gastelum, because we saw how good Gastelum did against Adesanya. Now, Adesanya is a guy who's just adding so much things to his game. He's kind of learning on the fly. So, but we had one of the greatest fights of all time when he fought. So I feel like that's an under the radar story, that Gastelum, with the middleweight picture being wide open, that anybody has a great performance. If Gastelum comes Whittaker, like, he could get that title shot, and you could sell that based on showing the highlights of their first fight, putting it out on free, the free YouTube and things like that. Like, you could sell that, the rematch. So I feel like that's an underrated. And also his turnaround. If he beats Robert Whittaker, taking the fight on short notice, after beating Ian Heinisch, when people started thinking, his fight against Jack Hermanson and all that, thinking he was done. Like, to me, that's a really good story. So that's who I think would have the best chance. Because I saw Robert Whittaker, and his style is, I just don't feel like it's suitable for Adesanya. When I made my prediction for Whittaker for Adesanya, I picked Adesanya, and I was very confident. One of those ones I just felt like he's just not a good stylistic matchup. The other thing that's under the radar is we've been waiting 2 years for this fight. Like, people forgot that these two guys were supposed to fight each other at UFC 234. These guys weighed in and everything. And then Whittaker pulled out the day of the fight, I think it was 2 or 3 hours before, or at least that's when it was announced, due to health issues. So I feel like that should have been announced. Like, that should have been pushed a little bit. That we've been waiting, finally getting the matchup. And I think it was a fantastic matchup then. I was obviously more excited for that matchup then. The heavyweight, I shouldn't say heavyweight, the middleweight championship of the world was on the line. But doing film study, I've kind of built my excitement for this. Either Bobby Knuckles is still the second best welterweight. I'm giving them every weight class but the weight class they're in. It's probably because they both were former welterweights, and then Gastelum gets up as heavy as heavyweight, like the day before weigh-ins. But Whittaker's still the second best, or Gastelum's still elite, got himself back in the title picture. Either way, it's an intriguing story. Now, I'll talk about their styles. Robert Whittaker, I'm waiting for the wheels to fall off on this guy. I've been waiting it for a while, because the amount of damage he has taken over the years just simply can't be taken and be successful. I think it's been like 6 or 7 fights. He just took ungodly amount of damage. I think about He almost got knocked out by Derek Brunson. And he got the wars against Joe Romero, and then he did get starched by Adesanya. He got hurt by Darren Till. He got hurt by Jared Cannonier. There's probably one or two fights in there that I'm forgetting about. And also, let's not forget about all the amount of injuries this guy has. I mean, there was times we thought he'd never fight again. It was just like one after the other, after the other. It's like he was like Dominic Cruz all over again. Now let's talk about. So that's all the stuff like, not his skills. So let's talk about his actual skills. So the first thing you got to talk about Rob Whittaker is his jab. Everything comes off his jab, and I love that he throws a double jab. He doubles it up. He's one of the few guys that can set up offense and defense with a jab. Like he obviously, you know what I mean when we talk about setting up offense with a jab. You jab and then you follow up with a power shot. But he also can hold back his opponent's attacks by holding his ground and just throwing the jab out. He did it extremely successful against Yoel Romero. He kind of does the same thing with his overhand right, though. He, obviously step in and hurt you, and he really wings it at his opponent. He almost knocks himself over with it, the way he throws it. But he'll also will time you coming in. He's very good at timing attacks. I'm going to keep talking about Yoel Romero because that's the guy he shared 50 minutes of a cage with. But he was very good at picking up the timing of Yoel Romero's attack. And one of the things he was landing an overhand right that kind of was like a wall for him. That was like a warning. Like, you come in, this thing might land. And it really turned Romero gun shy at times, which is not that hard to do. But what I like about why I really jumped out at me is he did it to Jared Cannonier too. Jared Cannonier is not a guy that's scared to come in and really force it. And even when he was losing, he tried to make it that way. Now, some things I always talk about head movement and being you need to have head movement, but you can't do it like Rob Whittaker. Rob Whittaker relies solely on head movement, and that has caused him to get tagged so much. But the reason why he relies on head movement is when he slips, he puts himself in the position for his left hook. While I kept saying his jab is what everything comes off of. He needs the jab to set up that left hook. The left, work and score your points. The left hook is what puts you out. That's what wins you the fight. Like that can hurt him. He loves to dart to the left hook side, throw the left hook, or what he also likes to do is dart that way, making it look like it's a left hook, and then come all the way around with a high kick. We talked about it. I actually remember we were breaking down film of Kai Kara France, and that was something I said that Kai Kara France does something. Dip to the one side and throw the high kick on the other side, similar to what Juan Espino does, but he throws the overhand, not a high kick. He also has a mean streak in his fighting that I don't think he gets credit for because of his personality outside the cage. He's the nicest guy. But case in point is Robert Whittaker is a guy that will throw the John Jones sidekick to the obliques. And John Jones does it, and he's viewed as, it's John Jones, what evil human being. But Robert Whittaker does it, no one really notices. He generates power because he's heavy on his front foot. He's like a boxer, but obviously this makes him vulnerable to leg kicks. I believe it was a leg kick that tore his ACL in the first Yoel Romero. I don't remember if it was a leg kick, but he did tear his ACL in his fight against Yoel Romero, so that makes it even more concerning. He does lose power because he lunges. He over pursues punches sometimes. It leaves him out of position. He's strong in the clinch, though, and this goes back to that mean streak in him that's there. He likes elbows in close. His biggest weakness, and this is what we talked about in the Jared Cannonier fight, and could be a big problem against Kelvin Gastelum. And it's so surprising for someone who's such a high level like Robert Whittaker to have this weakness, is he tries to even the score with every punch. When someone blasts him, he chases to get the punch back. And what I mean by that, like, you punch me, I want to punch you back. And it's like amateur thing in striking. I remember the last person I really kind of worked with, I kept saying, like, calm down, you'll land the punches, just flow. and we'd spar, and I hit him and say, "Don't try to chase that back. I got it. Give it to me." And somehow I made my boxing into this 3 times today, but it's something he did, and he. I remember in the second fight against Yoel Romero, when times he should have been recovering, he was biting down on his mouthpiece trying to land shots back. And the perfect example of it is Israel Adesanya fight. Israel blasted him, and then he starts coming forward and then gets himself knocked out for it. He is a good wrestler, and it's good to see him finally start using his wrestling. He used it against Till fairly recently, though I still don't think he uses it enough, but it's good to see that he knows he can go to it. And he's got legendary takedown defense. I mean, all you got to do is look at the Yoel Romero fight. Even more impressive considering the first fight he had no ACL. If he's on top, he's got good top control, good ground and pound, though we haven't really seen him in those positions that often. Now moving to Kelvin Gastelum. Motivation is always questionable to me with Kelvin Gastelum. You know, you never know where he is. Sometimes he misses weight. But for him to take a fight on short notice, that actually makes me more confident in him. Means that his diet was probably a little better than it should be. He was eager to get back in there. He was eager to get an opportunity against Robert Whittaker. That, to me, makes it seem like his mind is in the right position, too. So I feel better about Kelvin Gastelum based on that. But he's always so inconsistent. Like, there's moments he looks like even though he lost to Adesanya, like how great of a performance that was. But then I think about the time where he almost knocked out Chris Weidman just to get out wrestled the rest of the fight, and I think he even got stopped at that fight. I don't remember. He might have got stopped. I apologize if that's not true, but he's a southpaw. He's got great hand speed. He hits very, very hard. I mean, look at the knockout of Michael Bisping. He's got that great overhand left. He kind of fights in bursts. And he also makes the mistake that Robert Whittaker does, that he kind of overreaches for his shots. He can be gun shy sometimes too. Like, all you gotta do is look at the Darren Till fight where suddenly he wasn't throwing, and Darren Till chewed up his legs, and Kelvin Gastelum didn't respond. But his chin is very solid. Like, it's hard to hurt Gastelum on the feet. I mean, you think about who's been able to go 25 minutes with Israel Adesanya. Now, obviously, he was hurt by Israel Adesanya, but to be able to have a mostly stand-up battle and hold your own against Israel Adesanya. There's only one guy to this date that can say that on the feet they did pretty well to hold their own, and that's Kelvin Gastelum. I was thinking about the Jacare. Jacare's another fight. Like, him and Jacare were blasting. And Jacare has power. That's one thing about him. Like, everyone thinks about the grappler Jacare. Jacare's a power puncher. So as far as my prediction, I'm really excited about this fight. This is one of the, other than a pay-per-view, this is one of the best, I think, main events we've had for a fight night that got me really excited. Gastelum's going to hurt Whittaker. I expect that to happen. The question is, can Whittaker recover and still win? We've seen him do it since moving to middleweight against everyone but Adesanya. Brunson, Romero, Till. We already mentioned the list. Cannonier, going on and on. I don't know if he's going to recover. I'm going to say he does. I think around round 3 is when he starts landing his jab. I think he slows the fight down, fights at much slower pace that he's going to want to fight at, turn it into more of a point kickboxing match, and he starts picking him apart with a jab. Now, I was picking Whittaker to win 2 years ago, and I'm not changing, so I'm going to pick him again. I picked 6 upsets tonight. That's half the card. I almost picked number 7. I'm not picking that. I'm going to take Whittaker by decision in a really good fight. And you actually convinced me that my last pick of Fight of the Night should not be my fight of the night, so I'm going to switch my pick to Fight of the Night being the main event, being the Fight of the Night. And I want to say the line, I think, is way off. I think I know he's over 2-1 favorite. I know you just gave the line. I remember what you said, but Whittaker is like, I think it was like negative. What did you say? Negative
250. Minus 250.
Negative 250. Like, he shouldn't be more than negative 150. Like, I think he should be like negative 130. I think that line should be much, much closer. So though I'm picking Whittaker to win, I want to point out that I'm very close to picking Gastelum. So I think If Gastelum starches him in the first round, it would not surprise me at all. Ben, give me a pick.
All right. I'm with you that the line should be much closer on this one. And like you, I agonized before coming up with my pick. And I'm much higher on Gastelum. Well, again, I couldn't have been much lower on Gastelum than I was, 3 months ago. I picked Heinisch to beat him, like just outright. And it's because of the Heinisch fight. And it's not even that Heinisch is a world beater. And it's not that Gastelum unveiled, some, like, he didn't break out like a question mark kick that he never had before. It's that he showed up. He was visibly in better shape than he had been. He had no lapses in concentration like he did in the Hermansson fight, where he literally just brain farted a fight away. He showed up and beat a guy he was supposed to beat. And even though I thought he lost the third round, he won the last minute of the third round. He was there, not gassed, still in the fight, not coasting. Like, he was best Kevin Gastelum. And so I'm expecting that in this fight, which is a much I can't say much higher stakes because he might have been fighting for his job against Heinisch, but is as high a stakes a fight as you can get. It is very possibly a title eliminator. I'm expecting best Kelvin Gastelum to show up again. My problem is that best Kelvin Gastelum's skill set does not match up with Robert Whittaker's, assuming Robert Whittaker is even regular Robert Whittaker, not, okay, my knees, have finally given out, or whatever was wrong in my gut, like that inguinal hernia and like bowel collapse that he had 12 hours away from a fight have not recurred. Even regular Robert Whittaker just doesn't match up well with Gastelum. Gastelum, you're right, he has fast hands. Gastelum has fast everything. Gastelum, like, because he's like a 5'9" middleweight who, frankly, like, he looks a little on the soft side, we're not forced right into those cliches. Like, if you put him in a video game and painted him with a texture of Abdul Razak Alhassan, we'd be scrambling for things to call him other than athletic and explosive, because speed and shocking power are what make his game go. From the time he upset Uriah Hall at the TUF finale, even at his best moments until now. He's a very good boxer, and you explained that far better than I could. He's a very good offensive wrestler. Again, he's a JUCO standout wrestler, and he's one of the ones whose wrestling has translated to MMA very well. But those are both things that don't match up well with Robert Whittaker. Like, he's not going to take Whittaker down. No. To this day, I think part of what made Derek Brunson charge at Whittaker like a maniac is that he thought he wouldn't be able to take him down. So he was like, you know what, I'm just going to go out on my shield, see if I can just hit him. I'm the bigger, stronger guy. And I'd rather do that than just get pecked at for 3 rounds. Whittaker's whole thing of, needing to get every punch back. I love that you encapsulated that, because that never really struck me until the Adesanya fight, because Adesanya was the first guy that made him pay for it. Adesanya, well, it was on that Conor McGregor thing of being two moves ahead of your opponent, and not just outstriking him, but predicting his reactions to you outstriking him. And all of a sudden he hits you with the punch you didn't see coming, and it's the first Poirier fight, or it's the Alvarez fight. That was the level of thing he did to Whittaker. If Gastelum can tag Whittaker a couple times early, there's every possibility we see that, but I'm not picking it to happen. Whittaker, aside from that weird mental thing, is, he's a smart fighter. He generally fights to his best advantage. He should know that his jab and his kicks and his outstanding takedown defense are pretty straightforward routes to a 5-round decision victory over Gastelum. I'm picking him to take those. But again, Gastelum has the things that he can do. Like, if Whittaker's top gear has slipped at all, Gastelum will be able to take him down. We have a whole new fight. Again, if Gastelum tags him early and Whittaker responds like he did in the Adesanya fight, it's anyone's guess what happens next. That would make it even more likely to be fight of the night, because, hey, who doesn't want to see like a wild striking match between two guys who should know better? But I'm not picking that to happen, even if it is the fight of the night, and I am taking Whittaker by decision. Any final thoughts on the card or the fight?
Dude, as much junk we talk about the card, the breakdown of this main event has got me really excited to watch the card now. Like I'm really intrigued, and I'm thinking about this was a fight that I was intrigued 2 years ago, and obviously I'm not still as intrigued as was then, but I'm very. It's a good match, and I love that it's not a co-main event where we lost 2 rounds. I love that it's full 5-round fight. This is a good one.
It is a good one. It takes place this Saturday, April 17th. It is on ESPN. It is UFC Vegas 24. Enjoy the fights. Certainly right after the main event, check out either through the SureDog front page or just go straight to the SureDog YouTube page, the live recap and reactions with Keith and myself, where we switch chairs. He kind of runs the show, but we will take your questions and comments through the live chat. Between now and then, have a great week, and thank you for listening.